fancy uniforms and remember what got you here. Focus on the fundamentals that we've gone over time and time again. And most important, don't get caught up thinking about winning or losing this game. If you put your effort and concentration into playing to your potential, to be the best that you can be, I don't care what the scoreboard says at the end of the game, in my book, we're going to be winners.
This is the New Hampshire High School Basketball Show.
This is a second coming. This is a call to arms. Your finest hour won't be wasted.
The New Hampshire High School Basketball Show is brought to you by the New Hampshire State Liquor Commission's Division of Enforcement.
Right now, it's not about talent, it's about heart. It's about who can go out there and play the hardest, who can go out there and play the smartest. Now, they've been here before, so they're not going to give it to us. We got to go out there and we got to take it.
And now your hosts, Pete Terrier.
But I have a question, though. Those two foul shots at the end of the game, did you miss them? Or did you miss them?
Not exactly a shoot question, is it?
And Dave Haley from NHSportsPage.com.
All season long, we played our game. Right now, you're playing theirs. When we step on the floor, every second that clock is ticking, we are pedal to the metal. We run the ball. We pressure the ball. And most importantly, we control the tempo of the game.
Well, good morning and welcome to another edition of the New Hampshire High School Hoop Show. We do it live on the radio. Two fine stations here in the Granite State. News Radio 610 out of Manchester and News Radio 96.7 on the Seacoast. The crystal clear FM signal for you. My name is Pete Terrier. My usual co-host, Dave Haley, he went north for the weekend covering a couple of high school basketball games. Was at a game last night and is slated to be at a big one later on this afternoon. So we've got Roger Brown from the New Hampshire Union Leader, New Hampshire Sunday News on the high school basketball beat, writes that outstanding high school hoopla column. Of course, everybody knows Roger from his outstanding football website, nhfootballreport.com. Roger, thanks so much for joining us and filling in so quite capably for Dave Haley.
Not a problem, Pete. Happy to be here.
And it seems like every time that I do the show with you on a Saturday morning, we spent some QT, some quality time together on a Friday night, either at a football field or in last night's case, we were out there at the cozy confines of McHugh Gymnasium at Trinity, and we saw a pretty good basketball game between Trinity and BG.
Yeah, packed house, excellent game. Two of the better teams in Division I. I don't think anybody left disappointed in terms of, entertainment value. BG came up on the short end, but, two very good teams that are going to be interesting to watch in the tournament for sure.
Well, we'll talk a lot about that game coming up, and we've also got Jim Mignault, the head coach of the Bishop Guertin Cardinals, going to join us on the phone a little bit later in the show. And then later on, we got another guest, Marshall Crane, who is the president of the Frank Monahan Foundation. There's a big tournament going on tomorrow up at Bishop Brady High School in Concord. Bishop Brady's going to be taking on Kennett in a key Division II matchup in the sandwich game of 3 games. It's a triple header: prep school basketball, outstanding prep school basketball, and then the high school basketball. That should be a lot of fun too.
Yeah, that was an event, the basketball showcase. It was originally scheduled for December, one of those snow days where they had to postpone it, and so they scrambled. The field isn't quite what it was as originally scheduled, but they got some really good talent coming in there, a lot of D1 players, and not a lot going on the local sports scene Sunday, so give local fans an opportunity to get out there and see some guys we'll be watching in college shortly.
All right, let's hit the scoreboard now. The scoreboard brought to you, as always, by our friends at the New Hampshire Liquor Commission and that Division of Enforcement, the Buyers Beware campaign, reminding all adults it's against the law to provide alcohol to minors. Yes, even if the Super Bowl's over and you're kind of in that sports dead zone and you really don't have much to do over the course of the weekend, don't just pop open a bottle and start passing around the flask or whatever. You just can't do it. It is against the law. Let's start off in Division I, the game that we talked about that both me and Roger were at last night. 59-54, Trinity wins the battle of the one-loss team going into it. And Roger, this game looked like it was going to get out of hand at halftime, Bishop Girton was trailing by 12 points. Trinity was on pace to score almost 90 points in the game. They were up 43-31, and then the third quarter came, and Trinity didn't score a point. Have you ever been to a basketball game that you've been covering over the last few years, or even in your illustrious career, where a top team like that didn't score a single point in a quarter?
I've seen teams go scoreless, but not a team as talented as Trinity. It's usually maybe a girls' game where, low-scoring game to begin with, where one team just really struggles. But especially, watching Trinity in that first half where their offense was really flowing, they were shooting the ball well. And, not only did they go dry in the third, I think it was almost 2 minutes into the fourth before they got on the board. And they ended up with 3 field goals in the second half total. So to come away with a victory with a half like that, they got to consider themselves lucky, especially since they were playing a good team like BG. So it was strange to watch, the tale of two halves there last night.
Yeah, it's amazing how these things can change. Everybody always says basketball is a game of runs. Trinity now 10-1 on the year. BG slips to 10-2. BG's got a real tough one coming up on Tuesday night. Bishop Girton at Merrimack. I'm guessing that might be where you're headed on Tuesday night.
Very much looking forward to that game.
That should be fun. Merrimack victorious last night over Pinkerton, 60-41 was the final. Out on the Seacoast, West and Dover. A battle of those teams trying to maybe get that 16 seed in the tournament. West wins it. The Blue Knights, their third win of the year, 72-69 over the Green Wave. The streak continues in the bad way for the Timberlane Owls, 79-48. Alvern, who has had a real tough luck year, they lost a lot of close games. They blow out Timberlane 79-48 last night. Elsewhere around D1, it was Spalding 59, Concord 41, Bedford victorious over Salem 49-43 down in Salem. Central, by the way, had the night off. There was a lot of Little Green players last night at that game between Trinity and Bishop Girton. Moving to Division II. Here's a close one for you. Pembroke. They are not the dominant Pembroke team that they were last year, where they blew a lot of people out. They survive a scare against Plymouth 57-56. So Pembroke has won, I think, 3 in a row now after losing their first game against Portsmouth about a week ago on a Thursday night last week. And speaking of the Clippers, how about this score for you? 83-19, Portsmouth defeats Kingswood. There's been a lot of lopsided scores, a lot of teams not even getting out of the teens.
Yeah, last night was a real rough night for a lot of teams scoring-wise. I think Somersworth boys were held to 2 points in the first quarter and 2 points in the fourth against Campbell. Of course, Portsmouth, Jim Mulvey's teams, they play excellent defense, so if you have trouble scoring on a typical night, you're really going to struggle when you face them.
Elsewhere around D2, Hollis Brookline wins by 22 against Goffstown, 62-40. It was Lebanon getting back on the winning track, 66-58. I was at the game against Pembroke earlier this week when Lebanon gave Pembroke a battle, had to survive a big run to open the second half by the Spartans. Lebanon got back within the game, had a chance to win down the stretch, but Pembroke held on. Milford losing at home to John Stark. Think about how that program has fallen. I mean, they won back-to-back championships. They went undefeated, and now they can't buy a win anymore. Good win by Pelham. They continue to roll on, 70-35 against Sauhegan. And this one was an interesting game. St. Thomas gets a buzzer beater by Guy Cassis, 58-55. They defeat a tough Windham team in that D2 battle for the playoff positioning. In Division 3, Fall Mountain 58-41 over Mascoma Valley. You had Berlin. Here's another low-scoring game, 41-30 at Laconia. The Mountaineers win it. Messinic 62-60 over Monadnock. Conant rolling at Raymond. That's an impressive win, I think, for the Orioles. Raymond's a pretty good basketball team. 81-56, Conant wins it. Farmington beats Sanborn 70-63. You mentioned the Somersworth game. They scored 21 in a loss against Campbell, 55-21. Our friend Zach Burgeon, another big game for him. Moving to Division 4, Derryfield continues to roll, 76-43 over Concord Christian. You had Portsmouth Christian, another victory, 63-44 against Gorham. Kearsarge picks up a win against Newfound, 58-45. It was Littleton 63-36 over Lisbon. Newt, they get a win. How about that? Newt victorious against Linwood, 66-55. And in a game that Dave Haley was at last night, covering it for NHSportsPage.com, Profile improves to 10-2 on the year, beating Woodsville 8-3. Or excuse me, not 8-3. Woodsville now 8-3. It was 49-32 was the final. Dave will have the story on NHSportsPage.com, and he's also got a matinee game this afternoon that he's very much looking forward to. Groveton against Colebrook. So we'll have coverage of that on the website as well. We'll take a timeout right now. We'll come back. I want to get into that Trinity and Bishop Girton game that both me and Roger were at. Roger's filling in for Dave Haley as he's up in the North Country. We do have the video highlights of that Trinity Bishop Girton game up on NHSportsPage.com if you want to take a look at that. There was some outstanding shooting in the first half by Trinity, and then just a real cold and kind of an ugly game of basketball in the second half, but it was an exciting finish as BG tried to make the big comeback against Trinity. They just fell a little bit short. We'll talk to Jim Mignault coming up at 8:35 this morning, and of course Marshall Crane will talk about that great event for the Frank Monahan Foundation coming up tomorrow at Bishop Brady High School, involving some outstanding prep schools and some outstanding talent going to the big-time Division I schools next year. And then we got a good Division II New Hampshire matchup between Bishop Brady and Kennett High School. It is the New Hampshire High School Hoop Show on News Radio 610 and 96.7. New Hampshire High School Hoop Show, Saturday mornings live on the radio, News Radio 610 and 96.7. We also put the video cast of the show up on NHSportsPage.com. The great John Kesty in studio. He's got that Plymouth State Panthers t-shirt on, says Go Panthers. You got to jump in front of the camera, John, and show that bad boy off. He's heading down to Connecticut to see his son Logan Kesty play in a game for Plymouth State as the Panthers head towards the end of their season. Now, Roger, John was torn a little bit last night, that game between BG and Trinity, because his son Logan played for both of those schools. He started his high school career at Trinity, played for Dave Keefe for a couple of years, got sick of Dave Keefe yelling at him all the time. No, I'm just kidding. And then transferred and got yelled at by Jim Mignault for a couple of years down at BG. So, John, I don't know who he was rooting for, but it was an interesting game last night. You had two of the top teams in the division. I think a lot of people really knew that Trinity was, a true contender for the championship. But I think people were kind of questioning where BG stood because their schedule, they really hadn't played the Iron. They don't even have Central on their schedule this year, and they hadn't played, any of the top teams just yet. We'll find out more about them as the next week rolls on because they got Merrimack on Tuesday, and I think they got Nashua South coming up next week. But what did you see from Bishop Girton last night that tells you, they got a chance to get back to the championship game again?
I was actually very impressed with BG. The one thing that stood out is they didn't seem to get rattled. Trinity was really pouring it on in the first half. Everything they were shooting was going in. But BG just seemed to stay the same the whole game. Obviously turned up the defensive intensity a little bit, but they just kept playing. Pretty balanced team. You shut out Trinity for a whole quarter, you're doing something right. And they certainly look like a top team to me.
Let me ask you about the shutting out Trinity for the entire quarter. Do you think that was BG's tenacious defense? Was it awful shooting by Trinity, lack of driving to the basketball, maybe a combination of both of those things?
Yeah, I really think it was a combination. I mean, Trinity missed some open shots for sure. I thought BG was really defended the basket, in the paint very well in that quarter. Stripping Wenyon when he had the ball down low in good position to score. And, the officials were letting them play a little bit too. So some drives to the baskets where maybe a lot of times fouls were called. They weren't called last night. And that was the most surprising thing to me. You'd think, well, if Trinity doesn't hit a field goal in the third, that's surprising enough. But they, didn't even make a free throw, and it was a pretty physical game. So
I don't think they even attempted a free throw in the third.
Yeah, no, I don't think so either. And, so you think they would have at least got to the line the way they were playing, with the way Carmen was battling inside and whatnot. So I think it was definitely a combination of things, but BG was very scrappy. I thought they were, a lot of steals, C.J. Boykin seemed to be stripping people of the ball every time you were looking up.
He's fun to watch.
Yeah, he really is. And, it was just one of those things where a lot of factors, a lot of things went wrong for Trinity in that quarter.
When you talk about Trinity, a lot of people are spreading the gospel of Wenyan Gabriel, the 6'7" junior center, the younger brother of Mabor Gabriel and Karima Gabriel, the outstanding girls player that was around here a couple years ago. 18 points, 15 rebounds last night. Big fourth quarter where he had 7 of those 18 points and really broke the drought. He hit 4 free throws. His free throw with 16 left to go in the fourth quarter broke that scoreless drought that began when Ryan Otis banked one in off the glass at the buzzer of the second quarter. They didn't score again until almost 2 minutes gone by in the fourth quarter. So like you said, almost a 10-minute drought. Wenyan, to me, is not as good as his brother Mabor was his junior season, but I think he is improving. I mean, this is also a kid that had a broken bone in his leg, his foot, near his foot at the beginning of the season, so he wasn't playing much in the preseason at all. But this kid definitely is improving, and he's becoming a force down low in the paint.
Yeah, I think I've seen Trinity 4 times this year, and that was certainly the best game I've seen Wenyan play. Probably don't win that game without that type of performance by him last night. Very good rebounding. When they needed scoring, which, they didn't get it in the third quarter, but when they needed big baskets in the fourth, he was the one who came up with them, mostly from the free throw line, as you mentioned, but I think he also had a putback there, at some point in the fourth quarter that opened up a little bit of distance between the teams. So, very impressive performance from him. And when Trinity's shooting it from the outside so well, like they were last night, I think they had 7 threes in the first half. Very, very difficult team to defend because of Wenyan and Carmen Jean Petruzzi down low. 2 big guys that can do damage there as well. So they really have that inside-outside thing going for them when they're shooting the ball well.
You've seen most of these top echelon teams in Division I multiple times. And when I say top echelon, I'm talking about Central, of course. I'm talking about Trinity, BG, Merrimack, maybe Nashua South in that conversation. Have you seen Londonderry?
Yeah, I've seen Londonderry quite a bit.
What team outside of Central and Trinity do you think has the best chance to get to a championship game, if not win the championship?
Well, right now I would go with Merrimack. I saw them in the Christmas tournament, which was obviously very early in the year. Not impressed. But I think I've seen them 3 times since then, and they seem to be getting better every time I see them. And, they have the go-to guy with Eric Gendron, but the complementary pieces seem to be getting it done as well. They play terrific defense. If you look at their scores, teams don't put up a lot of points against them. So they have a lot of the pieces that could, lead them to a successful March run. So if I had to pick a team, that's a very dangerous team for sure.
Me and you both Nashua grads. You a couple years before me. I have to point that out.
Well, I didn't stay back like you did.
Yordi Tavares kind of coming out of nowhere. Didn't play last year. That was a Final Four team. When they lose the Preston brothers, Dave Dunham, they lost the bulk of the scoring from last year's team. They had Trevor Knight coming back. Cam Joyle was a kid who saw some minutes. But Yordi Tavares, who started on the team as a sophomore, did not play last year and has really taken the state by storm. They had a tough one against Keene last night. They were losing that game, I think 18-3 at one point early in the second quarter, and then South went on a big run to open up the second half and took control of that game and ended up winning. Do you see that team as a potential contender? I mean, I like the big kid they have, Mike Osgood. I like Yordi Tavares. Obviously, he's a tremendous player. Trevor Knight just does everything for you. Cam Joyle's a pretty good player as well. I think that they're kind of on that second tier behind the Merrimacks and the BG, and obviously Trinity and Central. And Londonderry. Got to throw Londonderry in there as well.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Pete. I thought I saw South early in the year, and I very impressed with them. I saw them play Merrimack. I saw them play Trinity, so they were playing good competition, and came away, nothing but good things to say about South. now I look at it, and I don't know if they were overachieving a little bit at that point because they've really kind of fallen on hard times here lately. I know Bedford, got them pretty good last week. They lost to Winnicott, and barely beat a good Alvern team. No shame in that. But then, like you mentioned, the Keene score last night was a little bit surprising that the game was so close. So I don't know what's going on here with South in the last couple of weeks, but when they come to play, and if they play like they were earlier this year, they'll make it tough for anybody on any night, and Central included. That'll be, you'll have to earn your victory against that team.
You look at what Londonderry's done, 10-2. I saw them a week ago against Pinkerton, dismantling the Astros 70-41, albeit with no Luke Rosinski, who came down with mono. I mean, that kid's had some tough luck just in his young high school career. He's only a sophomore, and he's going to be a real good one. But I like Londonderry. I mean, they remind me a lot of Central. They've just got a lot of different guys who can score the basketball, a lot of shooters, real good guard play. They've got size. It's not Wenyon Gabriel 6'7" type of size, but 6'3", 6'4", and they've got the big guys who can kind of handle the ball, drive, and also shoot, kind of like Central. You look at their schedule. They got Pinkerton coming up again. They got Salem, Alvern, Bedford. Then they got a couple of tough games to close the season, Trinity and Nashua South. But this Londonderry team, with the way the schedule's shaping up, they could go into the final 2 games of the season with only 2 losses and potentially be in position for one of those 4, home court advantage situations in the first couple of rounds of the playoffs.
Yeah, they're one of the better stories, I think, in Division I this year, Pete. I mean, people who follow the basketball scene really close expected them to have a good year, but I don't think anybody expected them to be this good with a new coach and whatnot. And really, they have a 1-point loss against Concord. Otherwise, they've got one loss the whole season. And they're a tough matchup for a lot of teams because, as you mentioned, they've got multiple scorers, a lot of guys who do similar things. Good shooters, those guard forward types that could still drive. There's not really many teams out there with a post presence like Trinity has. But they've got 4 or 5 guys that are you got to respect from behind the 3-point line. So that's a team that's going to be a factor as well coming down the stretch. I
know we talked about you maybe going to that BG Merrimack game coming up on Tuesday, but I don't know if you looked at the schedule right in your neighborhood, Roger. Exeter, Winnicott, the rivalry over in Hampton on Tuesday.
Yeah, that'll be. If people haven't been to one of those games, it's just like football. They just pack the house. It's usually a girls-boys doubleheader, and if you're not there for the girls' game, you're not getting a seat. And Exeter is a very interesting team, kind of regressing. Very good at the beginning of the year. I know Jeff Holmes thought this was one of his better teams talent-wise, but they, fallen on hard times here lately. They've been playing without their point guard, Zach Holler, who also has mono.
You've been hanging out with Rosinski?
Could be, But, I don't know if they're going to regroup and get it together because talent-wise, Exeter's a very good team. I mean, they gave Central a handful in the Queen City Invitational, beat Merrimack. So they can get it done. They're just chemistry-wise or something seems to be not there for them in the last few weeks. But that'll be an outstanding rivalry game when they play Winnicott. It should be a great atmosphere.
All right, we'll take a timeout, come back. We'll get Jim Migna on the line from Bishop Girton. We'll talk about that loss last night and how he saw that comeback and Trinity's scoring drought in the third quarter as the Pioneers eke out a victory against the Cardinals in a key Division I matchup. It is the New Hampshire High School Hoop Show. Roger Brown from the Union Leader and NHFootballReport.com filling in for Dave Haley, who's on assignment in the North Country, getting set for Groveton Colebrook this afternoon. His buddy Buddy Trask rolling out the red carpet for him. I think he spent the night on Buddy's couch last night or something like that. So I look forward to seeing the coverage coming up on NHSportsPage.com from Dave Haley from the great North Woods of New Hampshire. It is the New Hampshire High School Hoop Show, News Radio 610 and 96.7. It is the New Hampshire High School Hoop Show. Pete Terrier along with Roger Brown this morning from the Union Leader and NHFootballReport.com. Roger filling in for Dave Haley, who's up in Colebrook this afternoon to cover that game for NHSportsPage.com. Colebrook and Groveton. Dave was on location last night in the North Country covering a Division IV game. Profile beating Woodsville. You can see the story on NHSportsPage.com, as well as the game highlights from last night's game at the top of Bridge Street in Manchester. It was Trinity holding on to beat Bishop Girton 59-54. Here to talk about it with us is the head coach of the BG Cardinals, Jim Mignault. Coach Mignault, good morning. Thanks for joining us on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
So, Coach, last night, just kind of talking to you after the game, it was a defeat. You lost a tough game, but it seemed like there was a little bit of a satisfaction effect around you, just being able to kind of make that big comeback when you were down by 12 at the half. You tied the game. You held them scoreless for the entire third quarter and a little bit of the fourth quarter. I mean, this is a loss that I'm sure you don't like, but it was one that you kind of accepted and said, you know what, this is a learning experience for us, I think.
Yeah, I think we can build on this game. They got ahead of us. I mean, what was it? It was like 23-7 at one point, and we never lost our composure. We just kept playing hard, and I thought defensively in the second half we turned it up a lot and played very well.
Hey, Jim, this is Roger Brown. How are you this morning?
Oh, not too bad. How you doing, Roger?
Good, good. That first half, just wondering, were you dissatisfied with your team or, with their defensive intensity and effort in that half, or was it more Trinity, just things were going right and they were hitting their shots the first two quarters? I
don't think they missed a three in the first half. They were really, even the bank shot at the end of the half, they had an incredible half of shooting. And I think some of it, we weren't hitting the boards very hard. And they were getting second shots, and they were kicking them out, and they were hitting those shots. I thought, the intensity, we got it down in the second, we got it down to 9, and then he hit that bank shot to put it at 12. I wasn't really dissatisfied. I wasn't happy with everything, but I thought, we came to play, and that's what we want to do when we go in those big games.
Well, one kid that certainly comes to play every single game, and I really enjoy watching him play. I just wish he could stay out of foul trouble so he could stay on the floor. I think you know who I'm talking about. C.J. Boykin, super fast, so athletic. It's just got a motor at, he's got a notch above everybody else that's playing on the floor. He's just very, very impressive. Is that the one thing that if you could, maybe teach him, and maybe that would take away from his game, the high motor that he's got? But if he could just stay on the floor and stay out of foul trouble, you'd have yourself an all-state player there.
Yeah, he plays hard all the time, and he can't. I mean, that's just the way he plays. So it would be hard to turn that down. I wish he played a little smarter at times, but that's just the way he plays all out all the time.
Jim, back to the last night's game. It seemed like your team was on the floor for the second half quickly. So I'm assuming you didn't have a lot to say to them at halftime. But what was the message, after the second quarter?
Well, basically, I told them, hey, cut the lead down to 9. Gave up that shot at the end, but that we just had to go out there and just keep playing hard. I mean, there's no magic wand. We get on at halftime. You can only do so much. I thought we were getting good looks. We were doing things that I thought would get us back in the game. So there was really nothing I had to do at halftime except tell them to keep playing hard.
Jim, let me ask you about Jack Zimmerman, your sophomore point guard. He was on the team last year and saw minutes as a freshman. He reminds me a little bit of the kid Austin Franzen, who was also on your team before he transferred to Merrimack. Would you consider those guys similar players?
Yeah, they're very similar. Jack got a little bit taller over last year. From last year to this year, and he's really he's come a long way. He's going to be. I think by the time he gets to be a senior, he's going to be very, very good. I had a kid, Chris Burns, that played for me at Merrimack when I was there, and he reminds me a lot of him.
Yeah, I remember him leading Bryant to the national championship game in D2 a few years back.
Oh yeah, he was a very, very good player. He's coaching there now too.
Oh, really? Good.
Jim, just looking at big picture Division I, how do you see things? I mean, you look at Central as the clear favorite, like a lot of people do, and outside of the top 4 or 5 teams, is there one that really sticks out to you in your mind that might be a real dangerous team tournament time?
Well, I think come tournament time, I think Bedford's playing well right now. I think they could be there. I like Londonderry. I heard you guys talking about them earlier. They've been playing very well. I think Nate Stanton's done a great job over there. For his first year. So I mean, I think Central's very good, and they're deep. So whoever's going to beat them is going to have play their best game.
How about Manchester Memorial? Because it's a team that's right around 500. You guys played a great game against them, winning by a couple of points back at near the end of January. This team is kind of enigmatic. That kid, Trevon Mon, can shoot the lights out. Kabongo Nala Kalandi is a tremendous player. They've just got a bunch of athletes, and they're fun to watch as a fan. It seems like defense is their big problem, and I know you've talked about that as far as your team's problem defensively. How do you explain a team like that?
I don't know. They do have those two big scorers. I mean, Kabongo was hard to stop, and the other kid, the Mon kid, really can't shoot. Defensively, you just got to dig in. I think like last night, my team, showed they can play some defense. I mean, it's all comes with the intensity, and like we did a good job when we played Alverin. I think as the season goes on here, the teams that you're going to see playing up in Durham always can play defense, and if Memorial's going to get there, they're going to have to play defense.
Jim, looking ahead to Tuesday night, you got another tough one against Merrimack. What will be the keys giving yourself a chance to win that one? And if you could just talk a little bit about the Merrimack team, what you've seen out of them that has impressed you.
Well, that's a big rivalry game. I mean, like last night the place was packed. It'll be even more packed over at Merrimack on Tuesday. They have, Eric Jenner is a very, very good player. But they have other players like the Bork kid, Franzen, some of their forwards. Mickey Gasper, he plays hard all the time. We're going to have to go in there and match their intensity. If we do that, we have a good chance of beating them.
Jim, do you think that rivalry between BG and Merrimack is past the Nashua rivalry, and maybe it's because of the split between North and South? I mean, we talked earlier, me and Roger, both Nashua guys, so when we were in high school and growing up in the years after that, it was Nashua BG. That was the big rivalry. I think that has lessened some over the years because North has developed a rivalry with Nashua South since they broke up into two schools 10 years ago now. But is that rivalry with those Nashua teams still alive with BG?
Yeah, it's still alive some. It's not like, because I went to BG, back in the 70s, and it wasn't BG in Nashville. And it's still alive some. I mean, but I agree with you, when they split, it's a little bit different. And our rivalry with Merrimack right now, because we've always had, some Merrimack kids. I live in Merrimack, and I coach there. That just, it seems to break out. I mean, the places are always packed. And it's like a tournament atmosphere in there, so it's great.
Jim, one other question regarding your team. One of the things that struck me last night when you were down early was they didn't seem to get rattled, or if they were, they certainly didn't show it. What are you looking for out of your team to improve here for the rest of the regular season so you're peaking, so to speak, at tournament time? Where do you need to improve, or what areas are you focusing on?
We need, like last night when we got to 45-45, we came down like 4 or 5 trips in a row and took threes. They were open shots, and I had no problem with them. I mean, you got to take them when they're there. But I would have liked a little bit more movement on offense, and so we got it inside. But I think the main thing is just, having everybody play as a unit, and we're getting there. I think we're getting pretty close right now, and it's at the right time. We're in February, making the move towards March, so I think we'll be ready when come tournament time.
Coach, I want to ask you about one of your former players, and you had the championship team a few years back with Connor Green and McClung and Scotty St. Lawrence. That was a real great team and a lot of fun to watch. Connor played on that. Did they win the national championship in D3? That was a lot of fun. I mean, how much do you watch your kids after they graduate and they move on, especially kids like that who are going on and playing at such a high level?
Well, it's a lot of fun because especially now you can go on and you can stream it on the computer. So I got to watch them play they played a Division II team down in Florida. He had 44. So I get to watch them on there, and it's like Jeff Lund's been having a really good year at Keene State, and I get to watch them play. It's nice.
Someone compared Joey Marandola, your big man now. I think he had a tough game last night, but people were comparing him to Jeff Lund, or maybe somewhere I heard someone say, hey, he's kind of starting to play a little bit like Jeff Lund. I don't know. I saw Joey earlier this year, I haven't seen you guys actually since that Coaches for a Cause Jamboree when you played Bishop Brady and went to double overtime against them. That was a tremendous game. A lot of fouls in that game, as I remember it. But and when I saw him, I was like, wow, this kid's really stepped forward this year, and I think he can be pretty good. Have you kind of seen that progression? I'm not asking you to compare him to Jeff Lund, but do you think he's a kid that can be a factor? I think he was a little intimidated last night against Gabriel and Gian Petruzzi, but I think he can hold his own as far as big men in D1 this year.
Oh yeah, I thought in the second half, I really thought he played very well last night. I mean, he had a block on Wenyon. He can shoot the little 10, 12-foot jump shot. He's very good at that, and I think this year he's really started to improve, not just mentally on the court. His whole demeanor, he's gotten a lot better.
Well, Coach, we really appreciate the time. We look forward to that game on Tuesday night at Merrimack. I believe both me and Roger will be out there to watch that game. That should be a lot of fun. If you want to look at the video highlights from last night's game at Trinity, it's up on the website, nhsportspage.com. You can go check it out, and feel free to share that. We want to spread the word about the website and the coverage that we do.
Okay. Hey, thanks for having me on today.
All right, Coach. Jim Mignell from Bishop Gurdon, his team. I think a good loss last night against Trinity, 59-54.
Yeah, if there's such a thing, a lot of positives to pull out of that from the BG side.
All right, we'll take a timeout. When we come back, we'll get Marshall Crane on. I'm going to talk about that outstanding tournament tomorrow. It's a 3-game set at Bishop Brady High School. 2 outstanding prep school games. And in the middle of that, you got a real good NHIAA battle, Division II, between Brady and a team out of Conway, Kennett, who is playing pretty good basketball this year. We'll talk to Marshall Crane about that tournament, honoring Frank Monahan, the former coach at Bishop Brady that led Brady to their last championship game. I think that was in 1997. Marshall, I believe, was on that team. So we'll talk to Marshall coming up as the New Hampshire High School Hoop Show continues. Pete Terrier, along with Roger Brown from the Union Leader and NHFootballReport.com, and we do it on News Radio 610 and 96.7. Heading up towards the top of the hour, 9 o'clock, New Hampshire High School Hoop Show rolls on. Pete Terrier, along with Roger Brown, New Hampshire Union Leader, New Hampshire Sunday News, the High School Hoop Law column. That comes out what days? On Tuesdays and Fridays, or is it Sundays, or what?
Well, generally it comes out every Friday if I have my act together, Pete. And then
which is very rarely.
That's correct. And then probably as the season goes on, we might have some Sundays or add another one during the week.
Well, one of the stories that you wrote about in yesterday's edition of High School Hoopla was the basketball showcase for the kids going on tomorrow. Bishop Brady High School in Concord. Joining us on the phone, the president of the Frank Monahan Foundation. And that is a foundation that is going to benefit from this great event, a triple header of basketball. Marshall Crane. Marshall, thanks for joining us on the show.
Well, thank you very much, guys, for having me.
Well, I know that obviously Frank Monahan, who passed away a couple of years ago, is near and dear to your heart because he was your coach at Bishop Brady. You guys won a championship together, and Bishop Brady's got a tremendous team this year. I'm sure you're following the exploits of the Bell brothers and what Coach Yetton is doing, who was a teammate of yours back at Brady in the day. But I want you to talk about this tournament and why you put it on. You got a couple of good prep school games. Lee Academy out of Maine going to take on Notre Dame Prep from Fitchburg, Mass. in the opener at noon. Then you got the high school game between Brady and Kennett. And who knew how good Kennett was going to be this year? So you got a real good matchup there between Brady and Kennett. And then you got a prep team out of Montreal. I'm not going to try and pronounce the name of the team, playing Brewster, which is a national power, obviously, right here out of New Hampshire and Wolfboro.
Yeah, we originally had it slated in December, but due to Mother Nature and a little snowstorm, we had to push it back here to this Sunday, February 9th. And so we put together the foundation, the Frank Monahan Foundation, back in January of last year. So it's just over a year old, and this is one of our two major events that we put on this year. And so what we wanted to do is not only do something for the NHIAA, high school teams to show off a couple high school teams, but also I feel, and our board of directors feel that the prep schools don't get enough love in the state, and considering how great, in our backyard between, Brewster Academy, Tilton, New Hampton, and then you got, Vermont Academy and Notre Dame and all these great schools that are literally in our backyard that send players to, that you watch ESPN today, and some of the best players in the country are playing, Brewster. You got C.J. Fair at Syracuse, who just dropped 28 on Duke. Probably one of the best college games in a long time for a regular season game. So, we wanted to put together a nice little showcase to represent Coach Monahan and something that he would do and honor him, and put together, some great high school basketball mixed in with some prep school basketball as well.
Morning, Marshall. It's Roger. How are you?
How you doing, Roger?
Very good, thanks. Could you talk a little bit about some of the talented players that people are going to have the chance to see tomorrow? It's kind of unusual for New Hampshire fans to be able to have the ability to see so many future college players all in one gym. Like they'll have tomorrow.
Tomorrow, in the first game for Notre Dame, you got Jarvis Garrett, who's going to be probably the big star of the game tomorrow in that 12 o'clock game. He's actually getting recruited right now by Marquette, URI, Missouri, and Arkansas. And then you have another guy, Daxter Miles, who's going to West Virginia to play for Bobby Huggins. And then you got a big kid, Mastella, who's going to Pittsburgh. And then Lee Academy, they have a guy who's getting recruited right now, by some mid to low Division I teams from, like Iona, Southern Illinois, and UMaine. And then the second game features, Kennett is probably one of the surprise high schools right now. They're 8-3, I believe, and they have a kid, Ryan Vagenet, who's averaging just under 18 points. And then you got the Bell brothers for Bishop Brady that are, probably two of the, best young players in all of NHIAA basketball. And then in the Brewster game, you're featuring, Isaac Copeland, who's going to Georgetown. He's a big guy. He'll probably play the 4 next year. And going into, next year for incoming freshmen, he'll probably be a top 10 incoming freshman. But the big name right now, probably in all of tomorrow, is a guard, Devontae Graham. He's from North Carolina. He had committed to Appalachian State to play for Coach Capel. Had a great summer last year, and now is getting recruited by literally probably 12, 13 top 25 teams in the country. And Appalachian State won't release them. So it's national news, ESPN's writing about him and everything. So he's going to be, he's a 5'10" guard who literally can dunk, put it between his legs and dunk. He's phenomenal player, and not only a phenomenal player, but a good kid.
Hey, Marshall, sorry to interrupt. We only got about a minute left. We're against the hard break, so I just wanted to see if you could let people know. Obviously, you can get tickets at the door tomorrow at Brady High School. What's the what's the cost and noontime tip-off? So is it just single admission?
It's $10 gets you all day for all 3 games for adults. $5 for kids, and 100% of ticket sales benefit the Frank Monahan Foundation.
And a website that people can go check out more information?
Yeah, more information, you can go to www.frankmonahanfoundation.org.
I've got that posted on Facebook as well.
Oh, okay. So our producer, Shannon, posted that on Facebook, our Facebook page for both of our radio stations. Hey, Marshall, best of luck tomorrow. I think you got a great tournament-style atmosphere coming up. Those 3 games are going to be awesome, and look forward to seeing it.
I appreciate it, guys. Thank you for your time and supporting the foundation.
All right, I wish I had more time to ask him about the game that I talked to Coach Yetton about a few weeks ago when Oyster River played at Bishop Brady and Keith Friel dropped 50 points in the game because Marshall played in that game. But Yetton didn't quite remember him hitting 13 threes like I did. I'm sure Marshall might have remembered that as well. But we're out of time, Roger. The show goes so fast. I want to thank you for coming in and sitting in so capably for Dave Haley. We look for his stuff in the Union Leader and NHFootballReport.com. For Roger, our producer Shannon, John Kesty, the video up on NHSportsPage.com. I'm Pete Terrier.